February 1945. The world stands on the edge of victory. Allied forces have torn through France and Belgium, now hammering at Germany's western gates. In the east, Soviet tanks sit just 40 miles from Berlin, a city that will soon burn. Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, all liberated from Nazi control. Germany's defeat isn't a question anymore, it's a certainty. The real battle now. Deciding who controls the ashes of Europe. Between February 4th and 11th, 1945, three men meet in Yalta, Crimea. Franklin Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin. They're carving up the post-war world like a dinner roast. But there's another man in that room. A man whose presence sends chills down spines. Stalin jokes about him, calling him our Heinrich. Himmler. His name is Lavrentiy Beria, and he's the most dangerous predator the Soviet Union has ever created. If you want to uncover the shocking truth about one of history's most brutal monsters, smash that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss the dark secrets we expose on History of Army. This story gets darker than you can imagine, and you need to hear every word. The Making of a Monster, March 29th, 1899. A baby boy enters the world in Merkheuli, a quiet Georgian village in the Russian Empire. His parents are devout Orthodox, Christians who name him Lavrentiy Pavlovich Beria. They have no idea they've just brought forth a demon. Young Beria shows brilliance in mathematics and sciences at technical school. Smart kid, promising future. March 1917 changes everything. While studying at Baku Technical University in Azerbaijan, Beria joins the Bolsheviks. The Russian Revolution explodes across the empire that same year, shattering centuries of Tsarist rule. Suddenly, territories that St. Petersburg once controlled are declaring independence. Azerbaijan forms its own democratic republic in 1918. Beria's still a student in 1919, when he makes his first move into the shadows. The security service of the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic hires him. He's found his calling. By 1920 or 1921, he's working for the Cheka, the original Bolshevik secret police, the organization that would teach him every method of terror he'd later perfect. Blood in Georgia. The Bolsheviks aren't satisfied with just Russia. They want it all back. A Bolshevik revolt erupts in the Democratic Republic of Georgia. The Red Army invades. The Cheka plunges into the conflict like sharks smelling blood. When the smoke clears, the Georgian Soviet Socialist Republic stands where a democracy once existed. Beria leads the suppression of a Georgian nationalist uprising in 1924. What follows is genocide. 10,000 people executed. Men, women, anyone who dared dream of Georgian independence. Beria doesn't lose sleep. He's just getting started. 26 brings a fateful introduction. Beria meets Joseph Stalin, another Georgian who's clawing his way to absolute power. They recognize something in each other. A shared ruthlessness, a complete absence of conscience. Stalin sees a useful tool. Beria sees his ticket to the top. Climbing the ladder of corpses by 1931, Beria runs the Communist Party in Georgia, the top position in the Republic. 3 years later, he's on the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, directing all party and government activities across the massive nation. Stalin watches him work, impressed. By 1935, Beria has become one of Stalin's most trusted executioners. August 1938, Stalin summons Beria to Moscow. He's being promoted to deputy head of the NKVD, the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, the organization controlling state security and police forces, the Ministry of Nightmares. The current NKVD chief, Nikolai Yezhov, has been running the Great Purge since 1936. Between August 1936 and March 1938, the NKVD has imprisoned or executed over 1 million Soviet citizens branded as enemies of the people. Think about that number. Over 1 million human beings vanished, tortured, shot, worked to death. The Great Purge. Why the purge? Stalin's paranoia runs deeper than the Siberian permafrost. When he seized power, old Bolsheviks started questioning his authority. An investigation supposedly uncovered a network of party members working against him, including Stalin's rivals. Convenient, right? By the mid-1930s, Stalin believes anyone connected to the original Bolsheviks or Lenin's government threatens his grip on power. They all have to go. The purge starts with party members, Bolsheviks and Red Army officers. Then it expands like a cancer. Soviet peasants, intellectuals, entire nationalities. The NKVD's methods. Imprisonment in frozen labor camps. Torture that breaks men's minds before their bodies. Violent interrogations, where the questions matter less than the screaming. Arbitrary executions that follow no logic except terror. The goal isn't justice, it's control through absolute fear. Beria takes command by 1938. Even Stalin realizes the purge has gone too far. It's destroying the Soviet infrastructure, crippling the economy, gutting the armed forces. Time to pump the brakes. November 1938. Beria replaces Yezhov as head of the NKVD. The government admits to some injustice and excesses. Classic understatement. They blame everything on Yezhov. Over 100,000 prisoners walk out of labor camps, blinking in the sunlight. The Soviet propaganda machine calls it liberalization. Don't be fooled. The arrests continue. The torture continues. The executions continue. Beria just runs the operation more efficiently. The NKVD officers Beria promotes are artists of pain. Theater director Vsevolod Meyerhold gets interrogated by Lev Schwarzman, beaten on his spine and the soles of his feet, until he described the agony as boiling water being poured on these sensitive areas. Robert Eicher, once a high-ranking party official, gets dragged into Beria's office. Boris Rodos beats him sadistically, then gouges out his eye while Beria watches like it's entertainment. Beria doesn't just permit torture. He doesn't just encourage it. Sometimes he does it himself. He gets his hands dirty. World War II and the Secret Protocol, September 1st, 1939. Nazi Germany invades Poland. The Second World War begins. September 17th. The Soviet Union stabs Poland in the back, invading from the east. Poland fights desperately on two fronts and loses. Warsaw surrenders to Germany on September 28th. One day later, Germany and the Soviet Union carve up Poland, according to a secret protocol in their non-aggression pact. 40 brings accelerated purges. January 16th, Beria sends Stalin a list of 457 enemies of the people. He's marked 346 for execution. The list includes his predecessor Yezhov, along with Yezhov's brother and nephews. It includes Yefim Yevdokimov, a key figure in the previous purge, plus his wife and teenage son. Nobody's safe. Family connections mean nothing except more bodies. Beria supervises mass deportations from Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia after Soviet occupation. Entire populations identified as political enemies get shipped to frozen camps in the east. The Katyn Massacre, March 5th, 1940. The Gestapo and NKVD hold their third conference in Polish Zakopane. Yes, you heard that right. Nazi and Soviet secret police meeting like old friends. Beria sends Stalin a note afterward. Those Polish prisoners of war sitting in camps and prisons in western Belarus and Ukraine. Enemies of the Soviet Union. Beria recommends execution. 22,000 people, military officers mostly, but also intellectuals, doctors, priests. Stalin approves. Between April and May 1940, Beria's NKVD executes them all. The Katyn Massacre. 8,000 were officers captured during the Soviet invasion. 6,000 were police officers. The remaining 8,000 were Polish intelligentsia that the Soviets labeled intelligence agents. Gendarmes, spies, saboteurs, former landowners, factory owners and officials. April 1943. Nazi Germany announces discovering mass graves in the Katyn forest. The Soviet Union immediately blames the Nazis. For 47 years, the Soviets maintained this lie. Not until 1990 does the Soviet government finally acknowledge and condemn the NKVD killings and the subsequent cover-up. Total War, June 1941. Hitler betrays Stalin. Operation Barbarossa. Nazi Germany invades the Soviet Union. Beria joins the State Defense Committee, 5 members holding total control over all political and economic life in the country. During the war, Beria takes on massive domestic responsibilities. He mobilizes millions imprisoned in NKVD gulag camps, throwing them into wartime production. He seizes control of armament manufacturing. With Georgy Malenkov, he oversees aircraft and aircraft engine production. The gulags existed before Beria, but he's the one who builds them on a monstrous scale. He industrializes human suffering. Human life holds zero value for him. He once boasted, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime." December 1944. The NKVD takes charge of the Soviet atomic bomb project. They build and test a bomb on August 29, 1949. The project requires at least 330,000 people, including 10,000 technicians. The Gulag system provides tens of thousands for uranium mines, uranium processing plants, and test facility construction. Stalin's Heinrich Himmler, February 1945. The Yalta Conference. Stalin sits across from American President Franklin D. Roosevelt and introduces Beria as our Heinrich Himmler. Stalin himself understands Beria's cold, amoral nature. It amuses him. July 1945. Soviet police ranks convert to a military uniform system. Beria's rank becomes Marshal of the Soviet Union, despite never commanding traditional military forces. January 1946. Beria resigns as NKVD chief, but keeps general control over national security as Deputy Prime Minister and Curator of the Organs of State Security. Same year he joins the Politburo of State Security. The post-war years after the war, Beria supervises establishing communist regimes throughout Eastern Europe. He personally selects their Soviet-backed leaders. Starting in 1948, however, Minister of State Security Viktor Abakumov launches investigations against these leaders. November 1952, Rudolf Slansky and others get arrested in Czechoslovakia. The charges? Zionism, rootless cosmopolitanism, providing weapons to Israel. These accusations terrify Beria because he directly ordered selling massive amounts of Czech arms to Israel. 14 Czechoslovak communist leaders get tried, convicted, and executed. 11 of them are Jewish. Stalin's death march 2nd, 1953. Stalin suffers a stroke. Beria is among the first to see him unconscious. Nikita Khrushchev later writes that Beria immediately starts spewing hatred against Stalin and mocking him. When Stalin shows signs of consciousness, Beria drops to his knees and kisses his hand lovingly. When Stalin loses consciousness again, Beria's face shines with delight. He stands up and spits. Stalin dies March 5, 1953. According to Molotov's memoirs shortly after Stalin's death, Beria announces triumphantly to the Politburo that he'd done him in and saved them all, asserting that Stalin was poisoned by Beria's associates. The power struggle after Stalin's death. Beria becomes first deputy premier. His ally Malenkov becomes premier. They're now the most powerful men in Soviet leadership. Khrushchev opposes their alliance, but initially can't challenge them. His opportunity arrives in June 1953, when spontaneous uprisings explode against the East German communist regime in East Berlin. Based on Beria's statements, other leaders suspect he might trade German reunification and an end to the Cold War for massive American aid similar to what was received during World War II. Within days, Khrushchev persuades other leaders to support a coup against Beria. The ambush June 26, 1953. Khrushchev prepares an elaborate ambush. He convenes a presidium meeting and suddenly launches a devastating attack on Beria, accusing him of being a traitor and spy working for British intelligence. Beria's completely blindsided. He asks, "What's going on, Nikita Sergeyevich? Why are you picking fleas in my trousers?" When Beria finally understands what's happening, he appeals to his old friend Malenkov for help. Malenkov silently hangs his head and presses a button on his desk, a prearranged signal. Marshal Georgy Zhukov and armed officers burst through the door and arrest Beria. The monster revealed December 23, 1953. Beria and 6 associates face trial before a special session of the Supreme Court of the Soviet Union. No defense counsel. No right of appeal. Marshal Ivan Konev chairs the court. The trial lasts 1 day. During testimony, the full horror of Beria's crimes emerges. He's not just a mass murderer. He's a sexual predator and serial killer. His bodyguards testify that when Beria was driven around Moscow in his limousine, he'd point out young women he wanted taken to his dacha. Wine and feasts awaited them. After dining, Beria would take them into his soundproofed office and rape them. Women who resisted got arrested and shipped to gulags. Tatiana Okunevskaya, a famous Soviet actress, testified about her ordeal. Beria took her to his dacha and offered to free her father and grandmother from prison if she submitted. Then he raped her, telling her, "Scream or not, it doesn't matter." Some women who resisted his advances were strangled to death. In 1993, construction workers installing streetlights in the garden of Beria's former Moscow villa discovered the remains of 5 young women buried naked. In his villa's basement, he maintained a torture chamber. Even Stalin eventually distrusted Beria. When Stalin learned his teenage daughter Svetlana was alone with Beria at his house, he immediately telephoned her and told her to leave. Before and during the war, Beria directed his bodyguard Sarkisov to maintain a list of names and phone numbers of women he'd violated. The list contained hundreds of names. Justice, December 23, 1953. The Supreme Court finds 54-year-old Lavrentiy Beria guilty of treason, terrorism, and counter-revolutionary activity. Death sentence. While the other 6 defendants are shot immediately after trial, Beria gets executed separately. General Pavel Batitsky shoots him through the forehead. Like his predecessor Nikolai Yezhov, Beria begs for his life before execution. Khrushchev orders Beria's personal archive destroyed, including compromising material on former colleagues. Nobody sheds tears for Lavrentiy Beria. The monster is dead. This is History of Army, where we expose the darkest truths that shaped our world. If this story shocked you, imagine what else we're uncovering. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell, because the next episode reveals secrets even more disturbing than what you just heard. Drop a comment telling us which historical monster we should investigate next. Share this video with someone who needs to understand how evil operates in plain sight. We're just getting started, and you don't want to miss what's coming. See you in the next episode.